Hi guys, welcome back. Can you let me know if you can hear me, if you can see me, please? And then I'll explain a bit about what's happening and everything. We've got Princess and Carol, that's both waving, so hello guys. We've got quite a few new people, so hi if you've joined us. Let me know in the comments if you can hear me, or just give me a few thumbs up and that. Hi Sharon. Yeah, thank you, Princess. Right, okay, so this is really weird being in the new place, and basically it's so weird because I'm having right. So normally my computer would be here, where but because now I'm working on one table, my computer has to come off the table so I can do a live, and then obviously the sewing machine would come on here when I'm doing the sewing machine demonstration. But it's just so weird having to say hello to a camera on that. Normally the C bar that you guys are on is normally here, so I don't normally have to lean over so far, but I'm looking up there. So yeah, so if I keep looking down, um, I haven't got a setup for my for my phone for the comments at the moment, so I'm going to look into finding a stand that I can put my phone quite close by so I can read the comments. So, thank you, Sharon. Right, so tonight we're talking about sewing machine needles. I don't expect many people to be on because a lot of people already know the process of sewing machine needles. However, there is, over the last 12 months, 14 months, a lot of people have been asking me why do I use certain needles and when do I use those certain needles, and when I'm talking about them, sometimes I feel like it goes over their head or they just might not understand what I'm talking about. So in the group today, I put a piece of paper in there, piece of paper, I put a digital download, which will be linked once this video has gone into YouTube, will be linked to Princess's database, and this explains a bit about needles. I'm going to go through needles and what I personally use for my projects. So I don't dressmake as much no more, but I used to dressmake. So I will talk a little bit about dressmaking needles, sewing machine needles, but I mainly will talk about the needles that you need for bag making and quilting, because that's the only thing I really teach on here. Plus, there is a needle that I've thrown in on the bottom camera, that I will explain what I use it for, and it's for bears. So when we used to make bears within the group, which I'm thinking of bringing back as panels, Macy and Milo in panels with my fabric designs on, um, which I'll probably end up teaching one of the panels again. I will tend to use the specialist needles. Now, Janome is the only ones that I know that sell these. However, I think Brother do, but I'm not one. Not Brother. I think Smets do, but I'm not 100%, and I haven't really looked into it. So I'm going to go to the bottom camera. Let me just get rid of this part of the. And I'm just going to talk you through sewing machine needles. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Right. Okay. So you've probably seen my theory. I was brought up by my mum, who was a sewist, who used to work in a factory making pajamas, and then she went over to a teddy bear factory before she became a matron in a hospital. Um, so basically, she used to always say, use if the machine has a manufactured sewing machine needle, you need to use the manufacturer's sewing machine needle. If I have basically carried on with that myself. So I use Elmer and Janome as my sewing machines. Now, if you've got a HD9 Janome, which is the home industrial sewing machine, like a semi-industrial sewing machine, you will not use any of these types of needles. The needles are slightly different. They're high speed needles, so they have got a reinforcement shaft in them. I will talk about the anatomy of a needle in a minute, once I get one of the needles out. But on the actual sheet that I've put into the actual digital downloads today within the group, there is the anatomy already on there as well. My four go-to needles are, I'm just going to push this to one side because that's the needles I use for bear making. Okay, so, and you'll notice I've only got Millward needles in the jean. Okay, so I tend to use for my quilting, that should be there. For my quilting, I use a size 90-14. So I'm going to talk you through the two numbers. So the 90 is the strength of the sewing machine needle. So that's not the thickness, but what its gauge is and what it's made out of. And the 14 is the eye of the needle. So that means it's slightly larger so it can fit larger threads or smaller threads going through it. I use 90-14 for piecing for my quilting. I also use it for when I'm quilting on top of my quilts as well. I also use it for craft sewing. Now you can use this size needle for dressmaking if you wanted to as well. So like sort of a cotton dress or cotton shirt, you can go ahead and use this one. Or the other thing that I would say you can use it for is if you are making a tote bag with no stabilizers in it, and it's cotton or cotton canvas, a woven fabric, you can go ahead and use a 90-14 needle. Now, if you're using interfacing, a medium weight interfacing on that fabric, you can still go ahead and use a 90-14 needle. But however, where I say use a larger needle in bag making, I would say you need to look at how thick your fabric is. So if your fabric and you've heavy stabilized it with foam or fusible fleece or some like Decaville or whatever, you need to up your needle size. So this is where my 1600 ones come in. Now you can actually get up to size 100 by 18. However, I personally don't go any more than size 16. So the 100 is to do with the anatomy of the actual needle. So that's the width, not the width, but what the needle is made of. And the size 16 is to do with the eye of the needle, and that's where your thread goes through. Now, I tend to use a size 16 or 18 needle when it's heavy duty fabric. So likes of denim, upholstery, canvas, um, PU leather, so that's fake leather, vinyl, cork, and anything that's got heavy stabilizers on that. So that's like your interfacing, which is your fusible fleece or fusible foam or foam. This one, the size 116, is ideal for bag making on general sewing machines. But I always have a packet of these next to me. Now, for some reason, I've run out of the Janome brand. So I do actually also, if I run out of the Janome ones, I do always have a backup of another well-known brand. I don't use a really cheap brand in my sewing machine. So I have Millward 9014 jean needles. Now, jean needles is to do with the point on the actual needle. Um, so the point on the needle is like a roll, like so, like it's a best way to describe it is a ballpoint pen. These are slightly sharper, these ones, but they're still rounded like a ballpoint pen. This is more ballpoint, like a ballpoint pen. Now, if you're getting, if you're finding that you're using a 116 needle and you're still getting skip stitches, move over to a jean needle, either a 9014 or 116 size, and you will basically find that your actual skip stitches that you were getting with these needles you won't get them with this one. Now, if you are still getting skip stitches with these, it means that you aren't leveling out your presser foot. And I've talked about this quite a lot of times. Let me see if I've got a presser foot handy. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch foot here. Okay, so if your 1/4 inch foot isn't riding flat, but it's riding at an angle, so it's going up the hill, your needle cannot make the full poking down to the bobbin underneath. So you're going to get skip stitches. So you need to level off your foot. So if you are still getting skipped stitches with this, it means that either you're using the wrong foot, i.e. a walking foot, you're not using a walking foot or Teflon foot for bag making, or this foot is riding at an angle, so you don't want it at an angle, you want it flat. So if you are starting a seam here, you need to put something to flatten out at the back so it's not going at an angle. So sometimes you can carry a piece of cardboard, or some machines come with what we call a bulky seam aid. So you've got a thicker side and a thinner side. So that would go at the back there to make sure that it's level going over your seam. And then obviously that will disappear. This will disappear once you're on the full seam to sew it straight across. That's the only reason if you get jump stitches with a jean needle, that could be it. Now there is another thing that Janome do. I use it for bear making, but I have used it for bag making before. So I was, back in the day, I was making the leather bag, and the leather bag had fusible foam, and it was real leather. And I jumped from a universal needle, which these two are, which I went from a 116 size. Then I thought I'll try a jean needle, and I did use a 116 needle, and it was still getting jump stitches. So I looked up something called the purple tip, the purple tip needles. Now the purple tip needles, as you can see, they've got purple at the top. So if I get this out of here, they've got purple at the top. This is Denomi's design of needles that don't jump. So I'll read the back for you. The purple tip needles effectively prevent skip stitches when sewing stretch fabric quilt layers and also for sewing across the hems. That's also including because you're quilting with quite a large amount of layers, that also can bring in anything that's like bulky, like bag making. These aren't cheap. I tend to only use these for bear making anyway. So when I say bear making, anything with fluff in, um, that's the only time I generally jump for these. But I have jumped for it for one bag, and that was that leather bag back in the day. Now, if I just go to the front view camera, that's that one. Right, okay, so I've talked about the needles that I generally use, and what I only technically hold four types of needles in my little trolley behind me, other than my industrial sewing machine needles. Industrial sewing machine needles are slightly different. So first of all, the anatomy is slightly different. So if you've got printed off a sheet, you've got a flat side to these needles. Where's this? So the what did I call it again? Oh yeah, the shank. The shank part there, this thickness bit here at the top, which goes up into your sewing machine. There is a flat side for domestic sewing machines. Now, with most industrial sewing machines, needles, they haven't got a flat side. It's fully, it's a fully circle and a fully rounded cylinder shape. However, also you'll find with an industrial sewing machine needle, they are slightly longer as well by about 3 or 4 mil. That's only because they've got a bit further down to go for the bobbin, because the bobbin are sit a bit low, and in most industrial sewing machines, this your machine will sit in a swamp bed of oil, and basically what happens is the bobbin where your bobbin is kept underneath is a bit further down, so hence why it needs to be that extra long. So on the actual diagram, I've pointed out the anatomy. Someone's asked me in the past, I'm talking when I was back in sewing quarter, why is there a groove on my sewing needle? It's the most commonest question asked on the internet, which I've looked up today. I asked AI and ChatGPT. I always say that wrong, but I looked it up. It's actually to do with how you thread your needle. So the groove is it's an arc like that. And what happens is when you're threading your needle into the eye, is you thread it down, and it's to help your thread to go through that eye of that needle. I didn't know that until today. I thought they're having me on, so I thought I'll look it up on Wikipedia. Looked it up on Wikipedia. I looked it up on in my sewing book down here. I moved all this table out of the way. Looked it up in that sewing book, and it's right. It's the groove where the eye sits in is so the thread can glide through easily into the eye of the needle. I did not know that, and I was flabbergasted. So this explains, and I've done it really simple, just a quick general information. So machine needles vary in type, universal, ballpoint, jeans, etc. for different fabrics and by size, i.e. 80-12, 90-14. Where higher the number means a stronger needle, for thicker materials like denim, while smaller numbers suit lighter fabrics like silk, ensuring proper stitches formation and preventing skip stitches um, and fabric damage. Yeah, fabric damage can also come down to your presser foot of how much it's pressing down. I've also talked about the different types. So you have got, and these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There is actually 8 different types of needles. I haven't put the eighth one on because there's only one manufacturer I know that does them, and that's the purple tip. Okay, so universal. General sewing is used for general sewing on woven stroke PU leather, vinyl fabrics, and cork fabrics. Good for light to heavy weights depending on the fabric and the bulk of the fabric. Now, this also comes down to the strength of the needle, so that will be your numbers. So the higher the number, the bulkier the fabric can be. So if you're only sewing with woven fabric like quilter's weight cotton, you will only need a 90-14 needle or an 80-16 needle or 80-12 needle in universal. A ballpoint stroke stretch, a rounded tip between slides into between knit fabrics. So obviously it's woven different. So a ballpoint won't pierce the actual thread what's been woven into the fabric. It will basically push the fibres out the way for you, which is kind of what a leather needle will do, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Ideal for jersey, knit, lycra, spandex. Who sews with spandex? Oh my God, good luck. Um, uh, Medium weight PU and can do medium weight PU, it says. But that's if your stitches are jumping. Right. Okay, so jean denim needles. Okay, so strong, sharp, and robust for heavy fabrics like denim, canvas, twill, PU, stroke vinyl, and cork. Size 90-14 or 116. If you're doing denim fabric, you get different ounces. I don't know if that's what happens in I don't know if that's what happens in America and that, but in the UK we work by ounces in denim. The smaller the ounce, the heavier, the lighter the denim is. I'm pointing down here, but you can't see it, to your jean material. So personally, I would use a smaller jean needle, so that will be a 90-14. But when it comes to like where the pockets and the fly is, because you've got like on a fly, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of denim, and you would have had to interface 2 of those pieces. I'm talking about a fly and a pair of jeans. I'm looking up at the distance because I'm making one in my head. It means that you would have had some bulk. So personally, I would have upped my needle. Um, my mum always used to have when she was making clothes. She used to make her jeans as well because I'm a size inner leg, a 24-inch. Can you get a 24-inch inner leg anywhere? No. So my mummy used to always make my jeans and my dad's jeans because we were both got short inner legs. Unlike my mom and my sisters had the standard 28, 32 in inner legs. So my mum always had a magnet on the side of her Janome home machine, as it was called, the home machine, and it was on the side, and she had 2 needles, and she always painted one in a bit of nail varnish, so she knew that was the larger one. So when she was coming to certain areas on jean making, or I used to live in dungarees, so my mum used to make me dungarees. She used to grab the one that's painted for the bulkier areas, and that's a good tip. I've never done that myself because I tend to be lazy and use just the one needle, but she will tend to be using both needles, which I think is odd. But she explained to me in my later years, when I was older and started getting really into sewing, when you work for manufacturers, you do one thing on one type of jean. So my mom could have been putting in, for instance, she worked in a pajama factory, so at one stage. So she could have been putting the lapels on um the silk. So that machine that she was putting the lapels on would have had one type of sewing machine needle, but down the road would have been Irene, a couple of machines down, putting the waistband in on the actual um where it might have been bulky. So she would have been using a totally different needle. So Mom always said you shouldn't never ever make a garment with just one needle. And to be fair, I've never really listened to it until I made my wedding dress, and I did use two needles, and I was constantly switching round from them. But other than that, that's the only time I've ever listened to her. It just got too much. Um, so you've got a leather needle. Now, a leather needle's anatomy is totally different to a normal needle. So the point of the needle is a triangle, um, and you should never ever use that on the type of fabrics that I teach you guys with. So, i.e., the PU leather, you should never use it in. The cork leather, you should never use it in. The cork fabric, you should never use it. Vinyl, you should never use it. TPU, you should never use it. PVC, you should never use it. The amount of times I see on the internet where it says people are putting their blog posts, oh, I use a leather needle to make a PU bag. Oh, I cringe because what happens is it cuts at an angle. So and then basically, because it's cut at an angle, it's easier if you are doing tight stitches. What will happen is you can come along and perforate that like a book of tickets from a raffle. You can perforate it. And I can guarantee you there'll be some places on that bag where the machine has struggled and you might have a stitch length number 4 on your sewing machine, but it's probably not gone down to a stitch length 2 or even possibly a 1 when it's gone over a really strong bulky area and it's going to like really struggle sewing over that little bit. So don't ever use a leather needle unless you're using real leather, and that's mushroom leather. So there is vegan leather out there that's made out of mushrooms. You can use it on that, but just don't use it out of the plastic substance fabrics, and that's including cork. Cork's got a plastic substance in it. It's the bonding that puts the cork together on the woven back. So let me just read what I've just said on the leather. Um, Only use these needles on real leather. Do not use these on PU leather or cork. I've really emphasized that. So with the leather needles, when you use it on real leather, what happens is leather breathes, by the way. I don't know if many people know about that. You're meant to treat leather bags. So even if you buy one of the top brands, Gucci one or something, and it's made out of real leather, you are meant to buy a teak oil that goes into it, and you're meant to teak it at least every, as a ex-leather artist, I would say every week if you're using it every day. But if you're not using it every day, you're at least meant to put a little bit of oil back into it at least once or twice a year. So what happens is when the needle goes in, the leather expands out, lets the thread go in. What happens is it's constantly breathing, and that hole is getting slowly and slowly molding around the thread. It doesn't disappear, the hole. The hole's there for life. However, what happens is because it's breathing, it's going around that thread. If it dries out, it starts pulling away from the thread. hence why you should always treat leather. Okay, so you've got sharps and microtext. Now, a lot of people in the group use microtext, and fair play to you. I just personally don't like the price of them. I think they're expensive, but Smiths do microtext. Um, they can be very fine. They do a different types now, so they do universal ones now as well. They're very fine, sharp point with precision. Um, therefore, they originally brought them out for silk fabric and microfiber fabric, but these days there is an umbrella of them now, and the umbrella has got bigger, and it means that you can actually use them on bulky bags and bulky fabrics as well. If you want to, Smets on their website has actually got a full breakdown of their needles, and a lot of people prefer to use them, which is totally up to you. The only other um, two needles that are on the market is quilting, but generally I don't use quilting needles. I think that is a, what do you call it? Um a manufacturer's ploy of getting you, oh, because you're doing a quilt, you need to use a quilting needle. It's not the point. It's not the thing. Back in the day when quilters, years and years ago, when people were using Singer sewing machines, they were using universal needles for quilting or patchworking. They never had something called a quilting needle. So I personally don't use a quilting needle. I just use a universal needle. Um, but it says for piecing layers without puckering, but you can do that with the universal needle. So just putting that out there. And then the last needle is a top stitch needle. Now, a top stitch needle you can use for bag making if you want to use top stitching thread. Top stitching thread is thicker than normal thread. I've personally never used it, only for jeans and for when I've made dungarees and stuff like that. That's the only time I will use a top stitch thread and a top stitch sewn needle. So it says with caution you should use a top stitching one on PU leather. I'm just putting that out there. However, a universal needle with a high hole number, so a size 16 or size 18 is big enough, and you can use top stitching thread through that. So the next part on the actual thing is I've talked about needle size, and I've kind of talked about needle size already. I'll just read you out this. Smaller numbers, i.e. 70-10 or 80-12. Finer needles for lightweight fabrics such as chiffon, silk, lawn. Projects you will generally use these for is dressmaking, i.e. wedding dresses. Okay, so you've got medium size numbers, which is your average 90-14 needle. Your medium weight fabrics. So, for instance, for cotton, linen, quilting cotton projects, you will generally use this size needle is lightweight bags, cotton totes with no stabilizers, which I mean heavy stabilizers. Quilting projects, which I've just talked about, and craft style sewing. So, if you are bare making, you can use a size 90-14 needle, but I personally have problems with my Elna 780 Pro. Not my HD9, for instance, because I use a strong industrial sewing machine needle. But if I was sewing a bear on my 870 Pro, I will generally go for the purple, the purple top ones. Okay, the larger numbers, i.e. 116, 110, 18. Stronger needles for heavy fabrics, such as denim, upholstery, canvas, PU leather, cork, heavy stabilizers, fabric, that's including fabric with foam attached or fusible fleece. Projects you will generally use this size for is bag making, bulky seam projects, and real leather projects. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about the anatomy to finish off of a sewing machine needle. There is different names out there, but this is what we in the UK use. So there's the shank, which is let me just switch over to this one here. So I'll use the purple top ones. Okay, so the shank is where the purple top is of this. This is the bit that goes into your sewing machine here. You will either have a flat side for domestic sewing machines, or you will have a full cylinder one, which is generally for industrial sewing machines. Okay, so then you have what's called the shaft, which is this middle part here. So there's this little tube bit here before you get to the groove and the eye area. So that's the shaft. So that's the strong part of the needle. So that's where the large number comes in. So like the 90, the 100, the 110, that means that's to do with the shaft. Okay, and then you've got the scarf, which is what we call the groove, which is where the eye is. So you can kind of just visually see where it gets a bit darker here. That's where the groove is. So that means the thread will lie and easy to thread through the eye, which the eye will sit at the bottom of the scarf or the groove, whichever one you want to call it. I've just talked about the eye, and then you've got the point. Now this is a sharp one, but some points are ball. So if I've got the jean one, I'm not opening them. But if I've got the jean one on, it wouldn't be as sharp going into my fingers. It will be more like I'm pressing a ballpoint pen into my finger. Okay. Okay, so if anybody has any questions about sewing machine needles, I've just spoken as I generally know about sewing machine needles. Sewing machine needles is a minefield, and I must admit, it used to scare me. But my mom sat me down, and it just took her to sit me down and talk me through it. Don't be scared to actually ask a question in the group. If you're worried about a sewing machine needle that you've used and it keeps snapping, there might be other reasons. Ask the question in the group, someone might have come across it, or I might be able to help you. So yeah, that's all I know about sewing machine needles. I don't know much, but that's all I know, and I know the basics and what I use it for. Some people have been asking me about the stitch length of why I use certain stitch lengths when I'm bag making. I generally use three stitch lengths. Okay, so my main go-to is the standard stitch length. That's when I'm sewing the seams of the bag together. So for instance, when it's all flat and you've got the seams, and I'm doing that because when we come to open it up, you don't want to see any holes down the seam. When I'm top stitching, it depends on how thick. So if I've got just interface and stabilizer and I've got several pieces of fabric joined together, I will generally use a 3 to a 3.5. So that's number 3 to a 3.5. If there is a heavy stabilizer inside, I will go ahead. So in between the two fabrics, if I've got a heavy stabilizer in sandwiched in between those two, I will go up to a stitch length number 4. I will not go past a stitch length number 4 for top stitching. That's the only 3 things that I use for bag making. Now for quilting, totally different. I can do anything from a 1.2 all the way up to a 2 or 2.5, depending on what type of quilting I'm doing. So if I'm doing FPP, I'll start off at a 1.2. If I find the perforation is too close, I'll go up to 1.5, and that just means I can perforate the paper off really easily. If I'm just piecing two pieces of fabric together, I'll go from a 1.5, not 1.5, a 2 to a 2.2 or 2.5. And then if I'm actually quilting the design, I will actually go up to, if I'm doing free motion, obviously it would be down to a 0, and then obviously it's to do with the speed of how you push it through. But if I'm doing just rows with my walking foot, I will generally boot it up to a stitch length number 4. And that's my personal choice. My mum used to tell me off because it was a bit too high. She would have said you need to go down to a 3.5. But personally, I just want a stitch length 4 so I can get this quilted and then move on to the next project. That's my theory anyway. But yeah, but that's everything I know about needles and what I tend to use them for. Right, okay, I'm just going to talk you a little bit through everything that's happening in Fred's Gang and what's happening over the next few weeks. First of all, this is the last live of 2025. I keep wanting to put 2026 already, but no, this is the last Facebook Live in the group. However, I'll be doing short videos of anything that's released or when there's sales on. I'll talk about those in a minute. In the group, or I might come on and wish you guys a happy Christmas or a happy New Year. Right, so I've had some feedback about the advent calendars, and a lot of people well, I assume that everybody's loving them. I am going to be doing the Easter calendar. The Easter calendar will go on sale for Fred's Gang members 2 days after Boxing Day. You guys will get so many days to basically do the Easter Advent. Now, the Easter Advent, a lot of people have been asking when I did the post. So the Easter Advent is for one project. It's a bag, obviously. And there's 4 days. I was about to hold 3 fingers. There's 4 days to open up. Each day hasn't just got one item in. So one item, one day will have all the items for a certain part of that bag. And then another day will have all the items for another certain part of that bag. And then the day 3 will have the other part of that other bag. And then day 4 will be the pattern and the video. Always work with main projects. They will be always the final day. Those are going to be around about the same price as what the 24 days one was this year. I'm trying to get them a little bit lower. I'm just trying to work out with the manufacturers at the moment. But the problem is I can only do 50 this time. It's to do with me with packing at a certain time of the year. I've got quite a lot of things butting in all together. So it's going to be just 50. So Fred's Gang gets first dibs, and then General Sales gets second dibs. Lynn, I'm loving my calendar and my mystery box is brilliant. They were talking about mystery boxes. I'm not having a sale this year, in January. Apart from Fred's Gang members can. They will get this 25% discount that you've got now is going to be going over into January. However, in January, well, no, just after, I think it's just before New Year's Eve. I'm releasing another 30 mystery boxes. Your discount will be paused while those 30 boxes are on sale, only because I'm already doing it at the most extortionate, well, the most littlest price I can do things at. I can't afford to put the 25% on top as well. So once they've all sold out, the 25% will go back on. But you will be getting that massive saving again. So you'll be paying £30 as a Fred's Gang member rather than 35 for the mystery boxes. and there'd be a value of £60 plus in the box. I need to shift more because there's a massive large container coming soon in next year, and I need more space. So yeah, that's happening. Also, the large container that's coming is a change of business. Now, this is to do with the lack of space. So I will be doing kits from now on. I will be doing hardware as well, but where it comes to fabric, I'll be doing um, panels of my own fabric designs for particular makes, and that's including faux leather. So faux leather will be panels as well. I've spoken to my manufacturer and they said they're willing to do a trial run of the panels on the faux leather. So they are going to do a run for me, see how it turns out, and see if I get a good reception. Normally they don't do panels, they said, and they don't cut panels normally. But they are willing to do it if I get the numbers. So I'm going to do trial basis of kits with um, panels in. Now, when I say patterns that are coming up, it'd be pre-existing patterns. So, for instance, like with the Walk with Me bag, um, which I'm taking on Sewing Street next week, by the way, guys. There is panels going on Sewing Street. Those panels then I'm going to be releasing into faux leather, or I might have other designs that I'm releasing into faux leather as well. So keep an eye out for those. Um, that bit is changing. It's because I'm running out of space at my dad's and I can't literally afford it at the moment to go into a separate building, if you understand where I'm coming from. So yeah, I'm just trying to work out how I can change things for me personally, also to put down my hours that I spend at my dad's more designing here, because that's what I found the past 2 years with having my stock at my parents' house, at my dad's house. Um, I'm spending less time designing and I need to spend more time designing because, yeah, if you understand where I'm coming from. So that's happening. And the online retreat for Fred's Gang is happening as well. So in January, I will be releasing that. Now, everything for those, for the advent calendar and the retreat, they are going on split pay. The mystery box isn't. We will be doing the split pay like we did last time for the boxes. I will manually invoice you guys on a monthly basis. I have the first one. It's so cute. Um, totally understand. Yeah, so things are going to have to slightly change. Facebook Lives also, the times may vary next year as well to do with Michael's work. So it could be at 6:30 or it could be at 7 o'clock start. But other than that, it won't be anything past the 7 o'clock start. This was a small Facebook Live tonight. As of January, middle of January onwards, there'll be longer Facebooks and there'll be sew-alongs as well. I also want to say thank you for all the support that you've given me this past year, well, several years, with a lot of breakdowns. But obviously for the support that you've given me this year. Um, yeah, yeah, it's been a couple of tough years. Let's just put it out there. So yeah, thank you so much for your support. Yeah, I'm still here. Just I'm ready for Christmas. I'm ready for, you know what? Once Summer Street finishes and I do my tax return on not this Saturday, the Saturday after, I'm turning off everything for a few days so I can cook the Christmas dinner because I'm cooking Christmas for my dad and my family. And then after that, I'm going to take a few days rest and then be back in it with full strength. Okay, so I'm just looking over here. So Fred's Gang Zoom, for anybody that's on Zoom, with me. I just need to go over to the calendar. Sorry, 29th. It's on the 29th of this month. So it's going to be a seven, half seven start to 9 o'clock finish. Let's. I'm going to open it up and send you guys the link in the chat group. If you are new to the group, hi, I'm Becky, as I used to start off. Um, but no, if you're new to the group and you're wondering what Zoom is, once a month, I take £3 extra off on you. So, for instance, if you are in tier 2, if you pay £3 extra, you can join. There's about 15 to 20 of us that come on to Zoom every so often, and we just have a chat. I swear the girls come on to ask for the gossip, so I give the gossip in the background, not just on me, but everybody else, what I can. But yeah, no, I I do a Zoom, and basically it's where we just generally chat. We put the world right. If you are struggling on a pattern, you can always ask me live, face to face, on camera, and we can chat about things. Yeah, so there is space left on Zoom. So if you're interested, message me and I will adjust your invoicing going forward, and you can come on the Zooms. Zooms are great. They are fun. They are, and we put the world to right. That's the main thing. Right, okay, so thanks ever so much for joining me. I know it's been short. This will go into the database once I come off and downloaded this, and I'll give it to Princess to upload onto the spreadsheet. Please do not share. Someone was kicked out of the group 2 weeks ago because they took the database with them and shared it with a friend that wasn't actually a paying member. Please don't share the links with anybody. If they want to come in for a month or 3 months, then that's fine. They just need to privately message me and say, I just want this pattern and I want this video. I can charge them just for that pattern and that video. That's fine. However, please do not share. There is 80 odd videos out there. I just don't want them going out to non-paying customers. Love the Zooms, Becky. The Christmas calendar, Xmas calendar is fab as always. Thank you. I've got to film the last video yet. That's next week. Yeah. It's all happened too fast. Right, okay. So thanks ever so much for joining me, and I'll speak to you all soon. Have a great Christmas if you're not coming on Zoom, and Happy New Year, guys.